And game night in Oklahoma City. Good evening from the Oklahoman's video studio. I'm Dave Morris, along with the sports editor of the Oklahoman, Mike Sherman. Thanks for joining us again tonight.
Dave, thanks for doing this. This is fun, and we had a good time last week talking about it.
It was great. Barry joined us last week, a sports columnist for the Oklahoman, as we preview the season opener. And now we're a week into the season. We know a little bit more about the Thunder, a little bit more how the NBA may unfold this season. And tonight we'll preview the game against Toronto. The Thunder and the Raptors tip off at 7 p.m. just down the street at Chesapeake Energy Arena. And Mike, I mentioned that we learned a little bit about these teams. The Thunder, 3-1, one of the best teams in the NBA. Toronto, we expected them to be pretty good in the East. They're 4-0, one of 3 undefeated teams.
They beat the Mavericks last night, so this is a back-to-back game for them, Dave. They looked really good last night up against the Mavericks. The Mavericks have that total team makeover every year. It's a bunch of new guys. Wesley Matthews is a Maverick. So a bunch of guys that, wait a minute, they're on the Mavericks? But the Raptors have their team together, a team that was good last year. Not great, but good.
Raptors were good last year. Yeah.
Right? They're big. They play hard. Dwayne Casey is a little bit on the hot seat. You know, he's a guy coaching a little bit for his livelihood there in Toronto. Rex Kalamian, former Scott Brooks assistant, on the bench now at Toronto.
Deep knowledge from Mike Sherman. I like this.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And they played very well last night.
You're looking at some photos from last night's game, the Raptors in Dallas. You mentioned Dallas retools, but there's still that one guy with the sweet jump shot, Dirk Nowitzki, always there.
Dirk looked good. Dirk still got game. I'll tell you, DeMar DeRozan has really become a go-to guy for the Raptors, and they'll give the Thunder a good game tonight. The Thunder, of course, coming off a game where a lot of defensive lapses showed up. A lot of turnovers, and that's really became a story of that last game against Houston. Really, at halftime and midway, early in the third quarter, you looked at that game and thought they're going to be coming home undefeated, and then the wheels just fell off.
They had a shot at it. They certainly made a great game of it, and frankly, of the 4 games, 2 of them have been bar burners so far. The game against Orlando was fantastic stuff to watch, just from a fan standpoint, of 0 defense being played, but lots of great shots from both ends at the end of that game. Toronto, you mentioned DeMar DeRozan averaging 21 points, one of 4 players from Toronto averaging in double figures from the starters, and they match up actually pretty well with the Thunder and against KD.
They do. DeRozan, a guy that was in the draft the same year as Westbrook. And I remember Darnell Mayberry doing his draft preview. This was the team had not yet, we didn't know what the name of the team was going to be yet. It was the Oklahoma City team to be named later. When Westbrook was drafted, the court decision, the settlement had not been reached yet. So they were still the Seattle Supersonics. So Russell Westbrook's draft picture, he doffed the Supersonics hat. But we were at that point covering the team as if it was going to move eventually. They were trying to get out of Seattle. Anyway, we profiled a lot of draft prospects, and one of them was DeMar DeRozan, a guy I really liked. We were sort of obsessing over it. Westbrook was not on our list of he was profiled. He's one of the people in the series.
Yeah.
But DeMar DeRozan looked like the player that he's actually become. Of course, Russell Westbrook looked nothing like the player he's become. He looked like a defensive wizard. And he was the kind of guy that could shut down DeMar DeRozan in college, but really never showed all of his. So anyway, it's interesting to see how DeRozan has improved, and with him, his improvement has so gone the Raptors.
So have gone the Raptors. They'll be one of the best teams in the East, or at least it looks that way 1 week into the season, coming off of last year's successful season as well. You mentioned the coverage that you guys had in the newspaper for the draft with Westbrook, and we'll get into towards the end of this kind of what goes into a game night coverage for you and your staff. But in today's paper, the story there, what have we learned about Billy Donovan's sub patterns? And that's something else we can talk about 1 week into the season. It's a little bit different.
It is. Scott Brooks, and caveat, it's not really, we're just not piling on Brooks now that he's gone and he's been fired. Had incredible success as the coach here. But his substitution patterns were very ingrained. You could set your watch by him. Here comes, it's time for Tabo to go out. It's time for Kevin to get his rest. Time for Russ. That's not been the case. Unpredictable is what I would call Billy Donovan. Unpredictable in that Anthony Morrow looked like he was going to be a key reserve and has barely played a couple times, including last night or the last game against Houston. His explanation, well, they had a lot of perimeter guys out on the court, a lot of guards. Anthony Morrow, not a guy that goes side to side, really good on defense. And so they went more of a defensive posture, bringing Kyle Singler in, playing him. And remember, he didn't even play at all in the opener. So if you can imagine, did you ever see a game where Scott Brooks had took a guy in a 4-game span, first guy off the bench, and then last guy off the bench 4 games later? Just never happened.
It definitely has changed. Your guys, Eric Horn, Anthony Slater in the Oklahoman, and on the chat that we had today on newsok.com, broke that down, exactly what you're talking about. Rotation among wing players, shooting, well, you want Morrow. Defense, Roberson. Versatility, Singler. They each bring something different to the table.
Yeah, and there's an idea that perhaps Waiters is going to be the guy that provides a little bit of everything. You know, the guy that they need if there's a little bit of defense and shooting that you need, Waiters will be the guy sort of bridging the gap. The other 2 guys are very much specialists. Singler can give you the good 3-point range. Lengthwise, a little bit more of that. Morrow's deficiencies really are defensive. I mean, watching him run down the court on defense, that's not his strength. So these guys broke it down. The thing about the Thunder is, and you hear this from a lot of analysts, that these guys have more ways to win than most NBA teams. They're very much a Swiss Army knife. And it used to be that way a lot in the backcourt, but now it's in the backcourt, the front court, shooting. They really have a lot of ways they can beat you, which in some ways Scott Brooks didn't even have that much at his disposal.
Well, that's true. Something else Donovan is doing, we're seeing KD play in different positions. He's playing a lot at the 4 for small forward.
Yeah, KD at the 4 has had an impact. It's had a little bit of an impact on his playmaking. You haven't seen him with high assist numbers. Now, we're not going to go back to his MVP year when he had those assist numbers, triple-double threatening. Remember, Westbrook was out for a long stretch in that season.
He was just doing everything at that point.
He was doing everything. We're not going to see that, but we're seeing even much less than that. He's not playmaking. He's not getting the dishes that he did. Also, though, on the flip side, on the plus side of that is we underrate what a great rebounder Kevin Durant is, what a great defensive rebounder is, and that is a competitive advantage for the Thunder. When you see Kevin Durant getting 9 and 10 rebounds, that's when this team is gobbling up a ton of loose balls. That may be what's behind him playing that 4 and going real small.
I mentioned the chat that we had on newsok.com earlier today, and Eric Horn addressed that. He spoke to Kevin Durant about that. KD, by the way, is averaging 29.8 points per game and 6 rebounds per game. KD said, hey, we're running a lot of screens, a lot of pick and rolls. That affects my assist. However, I need to step back, find the open guy. And he also addressed, I need to hit the boards.
Part of the reason that he's not getting an assist, though, is that he's giving it to the other team. Kevin's committing a lot of turnovers right now. There was a point in the game where Westbrook was running the break, gave it to Kevin. The defense shaded that way, and he took that one extra dribble and then tried to force a pass. He's over-penetrating a little bit. I've seen Kevin really turn the ball over probably a lot more than it's customary to see him do. I mean, your best players, even Tim Duncan, your best players, when they're getting the ball, the defense converges on them and makes it hard for them to pass out of it. So your best players, the ones with high usage rate, they're going to have a ton of turnovers. Kevin, they want to get that under control.
They're on pace. Their offense is clicking. They're on pace for a record 22.6 assists per game right now. It's the fact that they've had 19-plus turnovers every game.
In that 22.6, they're passing coming from a lot of different people. But also, Russell Westbrook's passing is way underrated. Great passes that you're not even seeing come to fruition for assists because they're bobbling the ball a little bit. But some wraparound passes, some hockey passes that hockey assists that he's getting right now. Really incredible, his development. We keep seeing his development every year, and you can trace it in shooting percentages. on the incline, scoring averages on the incline, three-point shooting on the incline. Last year was rebounding. But I think this year, and there's not a stat for it, Dave, but just quality passing, vision, court vision. We're seeing it from Russell Westbrook, and I think that 22.6 number is a testimony to it too.
Yeah, the ball's in his hand a whole lot, so it has to be. He's averaging over 30 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, over 9 assists per game. You know, we saw those triple-doubles he was throwing out there towards the end of last season when he had to without KD. He's not quite at triple-double level, but those are big numbers.
They're big numbers. I'm going to commit a little bit of heresy here, but it's something we've been talking about. And I'm just really wondering, I think it's worth asking, who is the Thunder's best player?
You know, I was watching the crazy overtime game against Orlando the other night with some friends, and that was the discussion that came up. Is this KD's team? Is this Russ's team? And that's fan terms. We don't necessarily need to label whose team it is. But Russell's a really valuable player.
Well, your Lakers, back in the day, there was a big discussion about that. Was it Shaq
or Kobe?
Or Kobe?
Sure.
Think of what the idea that you could pose that question means for a team. We're talking elite.
Sure.
We're talking championship contention. As long as you can not make it about egos, unfortunately for your Lakers, it became about that eventually. Both those guys regret that now. Mm-hmm. We had a big article on this. Darnell Mayberry did a story on it. Shaq and Kobe got together and did a long interview about how much regret they had over this topic.
Well, they should.
And it was a good little lesson for Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, anybody else who's a superstar and has an ego.
We're looking at some photos of Russ so far this season. Again, there are the numbers. Byron Scott may not make the end of this season as Laker coach, I would say, and Kobe may not make the end of the season either. He really looks like the age has caught up with him a lot this season. Something fun we have seen, though, early on is the celebrations of Serge Ibaka and Kevin Durant. Serge, when he blocks the shot, it's not the Dikembe Mutombo finger wag. And by the way, let me just brag on our product for a second. That's just some of the nuggets and notes that you see just randomly tucked in the sports section is, by the way, let's talk celebrations. And then it's Serge, well, I'm friends with Dikembe, so I don't necessarily want to steal his. I want to do this. Spike the ball and then give the, thumbs
down. You know, Serge doesn't want, I was asked about it today. There's a blog on News OK right now in which he said, I don't want to talk too much about it yet. I'm not ready to come out with that yet. It's interesting. You know, Serge speaks, I think, 5 or 6 languages. And he hasn't really found eloquence, or let me say this, he's found eloquence, he hasn't found openness in really any of them, any of them that we speak yet. Serge is all that not all that forthcoming. But that one's interesting, Dave, because, the finger wagging, that was somebody else's.
That's right.
This is a guy saying, you know what, I'm accomplished enough now, I can have my own. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, we're also seeing something different from Kevin Durant after he drains a long-range shot. Maybe it's the holiday spirits, the little drummer boy. Maybe that's what it is.
There apparently is there's a musical answer to this, also on News OK right now, also on the blog. Dave, I have to say this.
There's a DJ from several years ago, right?
Right, and it's not from the Jersey Boys or the Beatles or the Bee Gees or Bruce Springsteen, so I'm not really that hip on it. But apparently it has something to do with Kevin's musical taste. I saw him do it in the opener against the Spurs. I was pointing to Jenny and telling her, hey, did you see that? That was a big shot. That was one of the very first that was one of the big shots Kevin hit. He struggled that night. You know, he really had to work against Kawhi Leonard. And I wondered if it was just sort of a relief for him getting in rhythm, but he's done it since then, so it's now become a deal.
You know, something else, in Eric's chat, he addressed that today. Somebody asked him, hey, Eric, what are you most impressed with from the Thunder so far this season? And he said, actually, I'm impressed with how KD is playing. You know, the fact that he's playing so well since he has such a long layoff.
Any questions? I mean, we've almost forgotten about the foot injury. In fact, I had forgotten about it and hadn't mentioned it until just now when you sort of it sounded like you were going to ask about it. And it's really not a question. Imagine that. I mean, think of these foot injuries. This time last year, we were running this long list of Jones fractures. I was having our guys comb all over the internet, track down this guy who had the Jones fracture, second injury. Didn't we talk about this before the opener?
We did.
The screw that they put looked like one of my Lowe's projects. I take it back to Lowe's and go, hey, can you help me fix this? This doesn't look right.
It's supposed to be a table leg or something. And
And it's, you know what? That's what his foot looked like on the screw on the X-ray. Now he's back to playing just like Kevin Durant. If there's anything missing, I think it's his discomfort or just unfamiliarity with what Billy Donovan's asking him to do. And we were told that this would not look pretty sometimes.
Sure.
Just to be prepared, it wasn't going to look pretty. Well, if 3-1 is not pretty, I think everybody will take it.
They were close to being 2-2, but they were awfully close to being 4-0 as well.
That's right.
And if we want to go back to that clip and listen to Billy Donovan talking about the turnovers and how they want to address it, we can roll that now as well.
Turnovers are the avoidable ones, and how do you solve the issue? Because this isn't a one-game thing.
No, it's not. I mean, I think you can probably pretty much go all the way back to the preseason. It's something that we've got to keep, continually address. I think, with offense and some of this stuff being new to these guys, I do think, as they get accustomed to making reads and those kind of things, it will get better. But I also think too, there's turnovers inside your offense where you're actually trying to make the right pass, but it's not executed well. And then there's those ones that, probably a low risk, high reward, a high risk, low reward, kind of pass. Or some of those we need to maybe get a little bit better at. But I think it's really just our team. It's not like it's one individual. Like on given nights, it's been different people. I just think collectively as a group, we all got to try to make an effort to try to improve and get better in that area.
So that's kind of been a theme even back to preseason. What are the avoidable turnovers?
Just a live ball ones where we just dribbling off our foot or playing in the crowd. We can eliminate those. But yeah, that's why we lost the game. We gave 25 turnovers. I don't know how many points on turnovers we gave. Yeah, that's the game. Me as a leader, I can't have 5 turnovers and no assists. That's not acceptable. So, we can correct that.
Kevin, how do you feel about the offense? You guys are now running here with Coach Donovan and stuff. You feel real good with it?
Yeah, it feels great. We got a lot of different options. A lot of different scores, and you still learning it, but it's you got a good feel for it.
Did the Rockets small ball throw the team off any?
Yeah, they got they played Brewer and Ariza at the fours, so it threw us off a little bit. We were cross-matched a lot of, coming back in transition, and James was playing forward guarding Serge, and so we don't want, Serge guard James. So coming back on the other end, it was kind of, we kind of got confused a little bit. A couple times they had some threes off of it. So we just got to talk and communicate better.
What are the avoidable ones that you guys could have had?
I don't know. We'll look at it and see.
You had 3 fouls in the first couple minutes of the third that put you on the bench. One of them was after Kevin lost his shoe. Is that one you kind of regret taking the auto foul?
Never.
Did you try to talk Coach out of leaving you on there after the fourth one a bit?
No.
Did you get the feeling that Houston was in a desperation mode out there?
Obviously. They lost 3 in a row. They should be desperate. We let them off the hook tonight, but a good win by them.
It's good stuff, Mike. That was post-game comments from Billy Donovan, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook following the loss to Houston. Hey, Russ is great. Whether you like he's just going to give you how he's feeling at that point.
Oh, yeah. What did he say? He said, asked about the turnovers. He said, we'll look at them, you know. No, we'll look at them. In other words, I can tell you, you don't know. And the other thing I thought was interesting is he just, he's going to play his game. He's not going to reveal a whole lot. Now, on the other side of the thing, though, Dave, is Billy Donovan, which from a fan standpoint, watching his post-game press conferences or his you'll learn a lot. You ask a question, he answers it in detail.
Yep.
He explained the sort of degrees of turnovers they're committing right now. That really is another big change. The level of explaining. If you want to learn basketball, and I think we as reporters need to approach this as people who don't know. We don't know what those guys know. We don't know what Kevin Durant knows, what Russell Westbrook knows about what they're attempting to do, how they should do it. And when you ask Billy Donovan a question, he gives you a detailed answer. We learned that a lot of those turnovers they're committing, there's some that are high risk, low reward passes, but some of them are good ones just made within their offense and not executed very well. He's asking these guys to move the ball in ways that they haven't been asked before, so they're not used to it.
A lot of the post-game footage from Billy Donovan, a reporter asked a question, and it's not the instant coach speak that we're hearing from Coach Donovan. He actually pauses, thinks about it, and then goes a direction with an answer.
My goodness, does he ever. You know, there's a video that we have on News OK from the exhibition game, one of the exhibition games at the arena, in which there's a fire alarm going off. And during the fire alarm, everybody else, including the Thunder PR folks, are trying to end the interview saying, hey, this is hard, nobody can. And Billy Donovan never broke stride, never changed, wasn't rattled at all, paused several times, gave a very extended answer to a question that was asked, looked at him, made eye contact. This guy is a communicator on a very elite level.
Tonight, it's the Thunder and the Raptors. They tip off at 7 p.m. down at Chesapeake Energy Arena. Tomorrow night, though, the Thunder goes on the road. They are at Chicago. And yet another nugget you will find in the Oklahoman. We asked Russell Westbrook about being Santa when it comes to doling out fashion. Phil Jackson used to give out books. Apparently, Russ gives out fashion to his friends and his teammates. And you guys ask him about Charles Barkley and his fashion. He's like, yeah, Barkley can't dress to save his life. I'd keep him in T-shirts.
It's interesting. There's a little bit of back and forth between Westbrook and Barkley about fashion. If you remember, when Russ first started flashing his fashion choices weren't as sophisticated once. Remember the fishhook shirt? I mean, it looked like something your kids give you for Father's Day that you have to wear.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, thanks. And you wear it every Father's Day. See? I still like this fishing lure shirt. I remember when he wore that, and Barkley just wore him out. Russell has stepped up his game substantially. Russell was sort of exploring the far reaches, the whole continuum of fashion back in those days. Now he's kind of got it honed. He's at Barney's. He's a guy who can dispense fashion advice, and he says, Charles, not so much for you.
Tomorrow night, Charles Barkley will be a game analyst along with Kevin Harlan, Reggie Miller, and Craig Sager. I believe our Mel Brock reporting those media notes in the Oklahoman. Looking ahead, though, Sunday versus Phoenix, Tuesday at the Wizards, and then next Friday hosting the 76ers. They're kind of bouncing back and forth between home and road.
Well, there's some big games there. The Chicago Bulls, of course, I think they gave up 130 points last night to the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, they haven't looked not that great, really.
Well,
that's another team. Whose team is it?
They got rid of Tom Thibodeau,
So there goes the defense.
There goes the defense. But I mean, it not just went, but went away. The whole concept. He's bringing Joakim Noah, or was bringing Joakim Noah off the bench. And of course, so that the whole culture and vibe of that team looks very different under Fred Hoiberg. The other thing about it is Joakim Noah, the mayor, the first time Joakim Noah and Billy Donovan will meet, and Joakim Noah had a really good interview on ESPN.com about Billy Donovan. We're going to talk to Donovan in the pregame tonight about Noah. Those guys, a lot of mutual respect. Very different people, but proof of how mutual respect and basketball sort of go together. So those two guys won back-to-back titles at Florida together. They oppose each other for the first time at the United Center tomorrow.
Last week I chatted with you about how readers can participate in the coverage of the Thunder as well as the Sooners and Cowboys on social media, submitting a proposal for a headline, if you will. This week, though, let's talk a little bit going behind the headlines of what it takes to cover a game. Home game tonight, but we can talk road game tomorrow night in Chicago as well. It's not just one reporter. It's a big group effort. Right.
Especially, I mean, we cover the NBA with more people than most do. You know, for home games especially, 90% of the time we'll have a columnist there. So that's two beat writers and a columnist, a photographer, oftentimes a videographer. So there's a lot of people from the Oklahoman there, and we're exploring it from all the different levels. There's photo galleries, you know, upwards of 20, 25, sometimes 30 photographs from a game that people can page through, save, do all that. There's video that they can watch on demand. Our guys, when they're on the road, they're shooting video.
Do a good job.
They've gotten to the point really where they're shooting their own analysis. They're sitting there with their iPhones and talking into. They've become, Anthony Slater has become very comfortable doing this.
Well, they look comfortable on camera. It's not the hostage video that we've seen in the past.
We did some of those.
But that's just the progression. In fact, that video you saw there of Billy Donovan talking, that was shot with a cell phone shooting past one man's beard and another man's phone, but it's good. It takes you there.
Yeah,
it's good coverage.
And our readers have come to expect it. They've also, they just want, it's all about content. And so the other thing that happens, Dave, is that our folks are going to shoot-arounds early in the day. That's where a lot of the information's coming pregame. They go to shoot-arounds in the morning. And so they're getting sometimes visiting shoot-arounds, but when they're coming off the road, a lot of times we're going to talk to the Thunder. So they're there in the morning at the morning shoot-around pregame. They're there when the coach is talking pregame and the players. And then, of course, post-game gathering, we have a column. Barry Trammell's writing a column tonight, a main bar, usually by Eric or Anthony. And then we have what we call the Thunder Journal, and that's something new we've started. We used to always just have a notebook, and that was good. But I wanted our writers to have more of a license to do some writing and provide some perspective that maybe the notebook, the title of the notebook didn't signify. Notebook is kind of like, well, here's all the other stuff.
It's facts.
The facts that we can
Turnovers,
get. Here's what they said. I really wanted a lot more perspective. I wanted, let's see if we can't get them, take us behind the scenes. I really admired the way the Washington Post did it with the Nationals Journal. So we've been doing that lately with OU and OSU and the Thunder. And Eric Horn's been on that journal lots of nights. It takes a different approach. Sometimes they're writing a lot more than we can get in the newspaper that night, but our cup runneth over and we're able to dole it out to readers throughout the week and also on News OK.
And of course, you have ladies and gentlemen working the desk as well.
Absolutely. I mean, every night we have somebody, Rob Backus, our lead designer, Raina Kemp, another one of our designers, Trent Shaded, our section editor many of the nights, Scott Munn, assistant sports editor, man in the desk, Chris Brannick slotting it, Dylan Phillips. Those are a lot of people. Ed Godfrey, a guy who is just a veteran, used all across our newsroom, reading, editing stuff. And then Todd Schoenthaler and Darla Smith handling the results. It takes a village.
It does take a village.
And to get the internet stocked, to get the stories posted for Oklahoman.com readers and edited for the paper. We have a lot of people focused on this, and it's a great team to work with.
It's good stuff. It's interesting to see how it all comes together, and everybody's sports fans. They're certainly engaged. We'll get you out on this. One weekend, who's the best team? I mentioned that Toronto is one of 3 undefeated teams. Golden State and the Clippers are also undefeated. They play later tonight at 9:30.
There for a second, I thought you were going to ask me about what was the best sports team. And I'm going to use this, I want to say this before we move to the real question. The video team here at the Oklahoman is amazing too, Dave. We drop these videos in the middle of the night sometimes, and they're long after hours. And the way they get produced into a story, and we give you the raw material. You guys make it a story. So the video team and the photography is just a huge part of what they do. It's not very interesting without the pictures. So you guys set it in motion for us, and I really appreciate that. The best team, I'm going with the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, they look like it, don't they?
Who'd they beat by 50 last night? That beat the Memphis Grizzlies by 50? Is
that
right?
That was shocking.
Sometimes the Memphis Grizzlies don't look like they're going to give up 50 points.
Right.
Oof. That left a mark.
It did. Tonight, over at Chesapeake Energy Arena, it tips off at 7 p.m. The Thunder and the Raptors. Full coverage can be found throughout the night on newsok.com, and, of course, coverage in the Oklahoman. Mike Sherman, I appreciate your time tonight with the pregame show. His cast of thousands will be covering the game courtside and behind the scenes. Big thanks to Todd Frazier, Paige Dillard, and the rest of the video team. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody.